If the New Orleans Saints want to convince anyone they're headed in the right direction, they're going to need to build off of some of the positive things that they've seen from head coach Kellen Moore and quarterback Spencer Rattler. We got all of that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as the Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, I want to tell you about some of the things I was wrong about coming into the season, including tight end Juwan Johnson. We'll dive into some of the names that you should start watching on Saturdays as we begin our draft coverage here on Locked On Saints. And I'll tell you why quarterback is still not off the menu for the New Orleans Saints in the 2026 NFL Draft. And we're going to kick everything off with the fact that the Saints need to prove that there's a vision that's attainable, and they're going to have to do it by building off of some of the positive things that they've already shown this season. We got all that and a little bit more coming up for you on today's episode. We appreciate you very much, whether it's your first time and your next time being here with us, this time making us your first listen and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if that first $5 bet wins, you unlock $300 in bonus bets used across the app. Head over to FanDuel.com today to get started. The New Orleans Saints need to start showing that they're headed in the right direction. And in order for them to do that, they're going to have to do so by building off of some of the positive things that they've shown here through the first 7 games. And you might say, Ross, there's not a lot of positive things through the first 7 games. You are 1-6 after all. But I wanted to focus on the things that the Saints have already shown that they can do positively, because there's no excuse not to be able to do them again. We have to stop talking about this team like it's a rebuilding team that's simply rebuilding. This is a rebuilding team that needs to prove something. And in order to prove something, you're going to want to start building off of some of the positive things that you've shown so far. So I've got 5 things that I think that the Saints have shown and done well, not consistently, but have shown and done well that they'll need to do more consistently well throughout the rest of this season, not to turn themselves into a playoff team, not to turn themselves into a Super Bowl contender. That ain't happening here in 2025. But they've got to start showing that they're headed in the right direction. And I think some of these 5 things would certainly help. And I want to start with head coach Kellen Moore, as well as quarterback Spencer Rattler. There were 2 things that stood out to me during the game up against the Chicago Bears. Not all 5 of these takeaways are going to be Bears game related, but this one is. There were 2 things that I thought stood out to me big time, was the in-breaking throws by Spencer Rattler. He threw the interception on a 3rd and 9 to Mason Tipton on an in-breaking route, put it too far behind him, and then it got picked off. And after that, ended up hitting Chris Olave on a couple of those in-breaking routes for touchdowns and had a little bit better ball placement in the middle of the field after that. I think maybe that was a bit of a wake-up call for Spencer Rattler, a guy that said and accepted accountability weeks ago about the Saints, about some of his throws being behind on those in-breaking routes, risking interceptions, things like that. Finally gets picked off by Nahshon Wright in that game up against the Bears, and then makes the adjustment and then hits on a couple of those. He's going to need more of that. You want to win in the NFL by attacking the middle of the football field, and especially when these defenses are playing more of these too high safety shells, being able to attack in the middle of the field and deep is very, very necessary in today's game. You have the speed on the perimeter to be able to do that, so finding a way to get that done is huge. That's exactly what happened on the first Chris Olave touchdown from 21 yards out. He gets over the top of the nickel corner in Kyler Gordon, breaks inside. As he's breaking inside, Spencer Rattler's already letting go of the football. They're attacking the spacing between those 2 safeties in the end zone, and it's a strike for a touchdown. Need to see more of that. Something they've already shown, need to continue to build off of it. The next touchdown that was thrown from Spencer Rattler to Chris Olave was on a big-time crossing route. Chris Olave going from the right side of the field all the way to the left corner of the end zone. Spencer Rattler putting it in a spot for him to find. That one stood out to me because that felt like a Kellen Moore special. Kellen Moore knows very well, go back to the 60-plus yard catch and run touchdown by Dallas Goedert last year with the Philadelphia Eagles up against Dennis Allen's defense. He knows very well that Dennis Allen's defenses can struggle with crossing patterns, and he utilized it to attack more of that in terms of what we're looking for from this New Orleans Saints passing game, and I'm sure that fans are looking for as well. You're talking about Kellen Moore as this offensive genius. Well, he's got to go out there and show that he can create those mismatches and implement those things in his system that you can identify that other systems always struggle with. That was a very good job by him. Need to continue to build off of that as well. Number 2 for me, Chase Young and his pressure. Right now, he's got a pressure percentage of 24.2% through his 2 games back. That's number 1 on the team already. Next behind him, the next defensive lineman after him is Chris Rumph III with a 12.7% pressure rate, nearly half of what Chase Young has put together. On top of that, you look at quick pressures, which are pressures that are generated by the defense within 3 seconds of the snap. And so far, the leader in the clubhouse for the New Orleans Saints in quick pressures generated is defensive tackle Bryan Bresee, with 7 of those over the course of 7 games. You know who's number 2 right now? Chase Young with 5 over the course of 2 games. So he's well on pace to blow right by everybody else when it comes to generating quick pressure. Quick pressure is very important in the NFL. Quarterbacks want to get the ball out quickly, but if your defensive line can start getting there quicker, it ends up creating a lot of issues for opposing offenses. That's going to be a big thing. Chase Young's already starting to show it. Need to see it remain consistent as he works his way through the season here. Got his first sack of the season last week, along with Bryan Bresee, actually, on a half sack shared there. Number 3, run game production, especially with Alvin Kamara and now Devin Neal coming out of the backfield. The New Orleans Saints through the first 4 games, where we were talking about them being surprisingly competitive in most of those games, with the exception of the Seattle Seahawks game. 3 out of those 4 games, the lone one standing out there is Seattle. The Saints rushed for over 100 rushing yards as a team. The 3 games since, all under 100 rushing yards. The Saints have got to get their rushing identity back, because that's the calling card. That's sort of the hallmark of a Kellen Moore offense. Certainly was the big expectation with him coming in and becoming the New Orleans Saints head coach. Have not seen it very consistently yet. Need to see that run game getting back to getting things done and getting them done in the triple digits on a per game basis, or as many per game basis as possible, but maybe not a 3-game drought like they're on right now. Number 4, how about turnovers? 9 takeaways so far on the season. 5 of them came against the New York Giants. So just 4 otherwise. It's not going to work. That's not going to work. You've got to be able to take the ball away more consistently than that. Now, the Saints have at least 1 takeaway in almost every game so far this season. But right now, they've got 5 in 1 game and then 1 each in 4 games. And so getting some more of those extra possessions for your offense while your offense is trying to figure out who and what it is a massive, massive opportunity that the New Orleans Saints defense cannot continue to let up. And number 5, Taysom Hill and Devon Vele. Those are 2 guys that I would just like to see more involved in this New Orleans Saints offense. To me, it's inexplicable, unsayable apparently, inexplicable as to why Vele has not been more involved. Taysom Hill's not surprising, coming back off of a major injury. He has not been as involved as maybe people might have expected early on, but this is kind of what I expected. So we'll see him continue to tick up. But there's just no reason 7 games into the season for Devon Vele not to be A, on the field more, and B, more a part of the game plan as the only big-bodied wide receiver this New Orleans Saints team has to offer. Speaking of that, the New Orleans Saints could potentially dive into the 2026 NFL draft for a big-bodied wide receiver, but that doesn't mean that quarterback is off the table yet in the first round. Let's dive into 3 draft takeaways and 3 big draft questions as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. The NFL season continues on, and there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your favorite team. But let's be honest, sometimes getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, prices that keep jumping at checkout. It can be very frustrating. That's why I exclusively use Game Time for my ticket buying experience. Everything down to the Game Time guarantee, making sure that you know that you're getting authentic tickets 100%, that they're delivered on time and all at the best price. But I also love them because the price you see is the price that you pay. You can even also go so far as to see the view from your seats before you buy the tickets. I pulled up Game Time, and just a couple of tabs later, I saw some amazing deals. I'm talking about some of your favorite NFL games as low as $100, and in some cases even lower. So download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use that promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, family, the New Orleans Saints should not consider quarterback off the menu for them when it comes to the 2026 NFL Draft. I got a couple of big questions that I want to go through when it comes to the NFL Draft for the New Orleans Saints. Yeah, we're already looking at the draft here. They're 1-6. All right, they're 1-6. They're going to be drafting probably pretty well in the first round and second round in this year's draft. They're on pace to potentially get that fourth round compensatory pick back as well on the Paul Adebo signing, depending upon what happens once Isaac Yiadom is healthy. But with Quincy Riley getting his first career interception last week and this team being in a bit of an evaluation mode, I wouldn't be surprised to see them roll with Riley throughout the rest of the season. But certainly we'll see what ends up happening there. But I want to dive into a few different things. We're going to take a look at some of the defensive linemen that you should know, because you know the New Orleans Saints love drafting offensive linemen and defensive linemen. And there's one stipulation that I have that would make that first round investment still worth it. Then we'll also be taking a look at a couple of the wide receivers that you should know. Yes, there are the big names, the Jeremiah Smiths of the world and all that. I get that. But I want to go in through a couple of other big names as well that I want to make sure that you know about. And I want to kick everything off here. We'll take a look at quarterback. Is quarterback still possible for the New Orleans Saints? I think it very much is. I don't think that there's anything so far that the Saints have done or that Spencer Rattler has done or that Tyler Shuck has had the opportunity to do that makes you say that's their guy for the foreseeable future. Now, there is with Spencer Rattler a very close margin to play with there, because for 6 games, we might have been walking away going, yeah, if the Saints just invest in a weapon, then they might be in a much better place, just continuing on with Spencer Rattler. But then just seeing how that Chicago Bears game goes, it's a little bit of a recency bias that kind of makes you hit pause just for a second. So this upcoming week, or these next upcoming weeks for Spencer Rattler, are going to be really important, because if you can show that you can bounce back from a game like that, because every quarterback has a bad game. Look at Monday Night Football. Baker Mayfield played terribly in that game and was completely locked up by that Detroit Lions defense and pass rush under pressure for more than 50% of his snaps. Of course, lost his top wide receiver at one point throughout that game. We'll be breaking that game down, because obviously the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are the next opponent for the Saints in tomorrow's Crossover Thursday episode with James Jarko from over at Locked On Bucks. But the evidence is there that quarterbacks sometimes have bad games. And so it's about how you respond. And so these next couple of weeks are going to be really important. But right now, I would say that quarterback is certainly still on the table for the New Orleans Saints until they know what it is that they have. Until they know that, then I think you have to consider the possibility of another quarterback eventually entering the chat at some point next season in the NFL Draft. Now, does that mean first round, or does that mean a later round player? Like, do you go with the moxie of a guy like Diego Pavia, who's probably not going to be a first round quarterback at his stature? Do you invest very highly? Are you in position to get a Fernando Mendoza coming out of Indiana? Maybe that changes everything for you for the way that you look at it. Or do they fall in love with another quarterback, a Carson Beck, a Lenoris Sellers, any of these other college quarterbacks that are out there? Obviously, the Garrett Nussmeier connections are going to continue. But I will say that so far, the 2026 NFL draft class of quarterbacks has been mostly underwhelming. But that doesn't mean that they're off the table just yet, as there's still a lot of season to play. But there's also a lot of season left for Spencer Rattler and potentially even Tyler Shuck to prove, hey, you don't need to worry about the quarterback position. I got you there. Just go and get me the pieces that I need. Next, what I want to take a look at is exactly that, finding the pieces that those quarterbacks might need and getting that big-bodied wide receiver that the Saints, have on the roster in Devon Vele, but for whatever reason are not utilizing. But getting another one of those big alpha attitude plus type wide receivers, I think would be a great move for the New Orleans Saints. And so a couple of guys that stand out to me, going back to the Indiana pool right now, Indiana's Elijah Sarratt. All of the guys that I'm mentioning right now are like 6'2", 6'3", 200 plus pounds. Sarratt's a little bit more of like the 200 flat to 205, maybe 210 pound guy. Just one of those dudes that, to me, what makes him stand out is his attitude. He's the type of dude that just has that chip on his shoulder to where before every snap, he knows he's bigger, better, faster, stronger than the guy that's lined up ahead of him. And I don't know if the Saints necessarily have that attitude on their team right now. And Elijah Sarratt bringing that kind of attitude would be huge for the New Orleans Saints. I mean, he would be a great compliment to guys like Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Trey Palmer, if he's still on the roster next year. And then you add him to Devon Vele to have another big-bodied option. I think he would be a lot of fun in this offense. How about Arizona State wide receiver Jordyn Tyson? Many expect him to potentially be the first wide receiver off the board in the 2026 NFL draft, assuming that he makes it through the season well. This could be another one that the Saints could go after. This is a guy that just makes every play, plays through injury. He's tough. He will go out there and fight and battle. He's great at the catch point. He's great in jump ball situations as well, and has a little bit of long speed too that you'll be able to take advantage of. And he's a tenacious, really physical player, which could help you out in the run game as well. A guy like Jordyn Tyson, again, would complement what the Saints have speed-wise on this roster. And a guy, of course, that's been getting a lot of attention here recently is the 6'2", 220-plus pound Chris Bell, who moves like he's 180. It's really incredible, his fluid movement ability, the way that he is still physical at the catch point as well, his breakaway speed. He just does a lot of things really good coming out of Louisville. Another one of those players that would be a really, really good piece along with some of the speed guys that the Saints have, assuming that, none of those players are moved at the trade deadline. And, in Rashid Shaheed's case, re-signs with the team, so on and so forth. Like, a lot of things can change in terms of what the Saints have versus what they will enter the offseason with in 2026. But any of these three players, along with the other big names that are out there, of course, would be massive, massive guys or contributors potentially for this team. So Elijah Sarratt, Jordyn Tyson, as well as Chris Bell. Guys, make sure you're watching on Saturdays. And finally, we know the New Orleans Saints love to go offensive line and defensive line in the first round of the NFL draft. The only way that I feel like that is a good move for the New Orleans Saints, who look to have both tackle positions locked down, so no need to invest a first round pick in your interior offensive line these days, is going with an elite pass rusher. Guys like Rueben Bain coming out of Miami, or even Arvell Reese, who's a little bit of a hybrid linebacker pass rusher coming out of Ohio State. These guys, I think, would be massive additions for Brandon Staley's defense. It would probably get you a little bit closer to Staley having the personnel that he wants for the system that he wants to run. So Rueben Bain, Arvell Reese, both guys to continue to watch on Saturdays, as well as potential first-round picks for the New Orleans Saints. But outside of that, offensive line, defensive line, you can save that for later on in the draft. But if you can get an elite difference maker on defense, go and get that guy in the first round if that's where you want to invest. And those are the names that I think could be those players. Coming up next, I want to tell you the things that I was wrong about, leading off with Juwan Johnson, who's having a sneaky good year, but not the year that I thought that he would have early. Let's get to that next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance. You can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go, while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by friends over at FanDuel, the best place to go to get in on all of the NFL action with kickoff each week. They're making sure, FanDuel, that you have something that you won't want to miss, especially as a new customer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if you get that bet right, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets for you to use across the app. So all you got to do is pick a bet, put down $5. If it hits, you unlock those $300 for you to use on other odds lines and player props, same game parlays, live betting as well, which is one of my favorites. If there's like a heavy favorite at home that's trailing at halftime, jump in, put money down on that heavy favorite to pull off a potential comeback. It's one of the more fun ways that I have some experience over at FanDuel. You can find all that and more, including the New Orleans Saints, now 4.5-point underdogs. So the line getting a little bit better for them up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this weekend. So what you waiting for? Head over to FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app and get started today. Let's Get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints have proved me wrong on a couple of things here so far this year, and I thought it'd be fun to kind of go back through it. I had an interesting conversation with someone not too long ago that mentioned like, hey, you were super right about where the Saints were going to be this season. Really appreciate that. All those other things. And I thought, you know what? I need to take myself down a peg. Let me tell you all the things that I got wrong so far going into the season. And then just a little fun here as we get into the middle of the week before we get into game previews of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and all those other things. Don't forget, you can catch us every single Monday through Friday over the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and share here on Locked On Saints. Make sure that we're, continuing to do well, continue to be able to bring this to you 5 days a week for free here on the show. We appreciate you very much for all of the support. And big thank you to everybody that's taken a moment to say hi when you do see me. I do mean that when I say it. If you see me, do say hi. All right. What was one of the first things I was wrong about? This is an interesting conversation that came up in one of my group chats too. And one of the big things that I talked about before the season began was how tight end Juwan Johnson was going to be in for this big breakout year. And to be fair, he is absolutely in line right now for career highs in receptions and receiving yards, and probably wouldn't have to work too hard to also have a career high in receiving touchdowns as well. But the big thing that we talked about was him being a little bit more involved early on in the season, which is true. It just hasn't looked the way that I thought that it would look. I thought Juwan was going to have a little bit more of a dominating early season, but we've seen his season kind of up and down, riddled by drops and plays like that so far this year, going all the way back to the first game of the year with the dropped in or early on in the year with the drop touchdown in the end zone. And then a couple of other big drops here throughout the season as well. Got, kind of flamed on social media for flexing on a 2-yard gain and all that. And I'm like, look, flex away. Like do what you got to do. But I get it. Like the season just hasn't been what we thought it was going to be here on the show for Juwan early on in terms of it looking like he was going to be this big dominating factor. But I don't think that obviously his season's far from done. He's not going anywhere. People have talked about trying to trade him. You're not trading him. They just gave him a massive extension. He's not going anywhere, and he doesn't need to go anywhere. He needs to kind of show that he can play a little bit more consistently. And the Saints need to show that they can utilize him a little bit more consistently as well, especially even with Foster Morrow and Taysom Hill getting more involved in the offense. That might take some of those opportunities away. So if they want that contract to play out, they've got to continue to elevate him and put him in good positions on the field. And on the flip side, he's got to be able to consistently take advantage of those opportunities here throughout the season. Has one receiving touchdown so far, but he's on pace for over 700 plus receiving yards, which would easily be a career high for him. And he's well on pace for a career high in receptions as well. So we'll see how the season continues to go for him. But I'm comfortable saying that the season has not started as strongly as I thought that it would start from him, just because of the drops and some of the miscues as well. I mean, you even see it in pass protection and things like that, which, look, he's a converted wide receiver. Blocking was never going to be the strength there. But if you're going to put him in the situations there, you got to help him develop in that category. So those are places where I think we're not necessarily seeing what I thought we were going to see from Juwan Johnson. So I'm going to tap that one down for me as wrong. Another thing I thought it was going to be that I was wrong about was seeing a more explosive offense with the speed that the Saints have at wide receiver and with Kellen Moore running the show. The explosion just isn't really there on a consistent enough basis. Yeah, you got the big 87-yard touchdown to Rashid Shaheed. You got a couple of big completions downfield as well, including the 50-plus yarder to Chris Olave just last weekend against the Chicago Bears, plus a couple of touchdowns there. But the consistency of the big play has not been there when you have one of the fastest wide receiver rooms in the NFL. And again, that genius offensive head coach that's supposed to be able to go out there and elevate those players and put them in position to utilize their superpowers. I don't feel like we've consistently seen that pan out. Is that because of the usage of the receivers? Or is that because of some limitations in terms of what the offense can do with its passing offense, with its passer, with its receivers? Look, the speed's there, the arm is there, and the play calls are there. So something else isn't happening the way that it needs to happen. Saints have got to get that figured out and get some of those explosive plays going. They have not been the explosive offense that I thought that they had the potential to be, right? Not that I guaranteed that they were going to be, but I thought that they had potential to at least be that fun, explosive offense, even in losing efforts that we've seen in the past, going back to like 2014, 15, 16 here in New Orleans, where Drew Brees was having to counteract some of the worst defenses in NFL history during that time. And I'm not trying to compare Spencer Rattler to Drew Brees. I'm just that that was a team that was still fun to watch, even though the defense was awful and the team was losing a lot of games in those situations. But obviously the quarterback play kept them in seasons like that in the past. Number 3 for me was the pass rush consistency. I thought Brandon Staley's defense was going to do a little bit more when it came to these pass rushers. Now, I'm learning that the Saints just simply don't have, it feels like, the personnel that's necessary to really be able to take full advantage of what that Brandon Staley defense can offer. But the almost sacks are still there. The missed tackles are still there from the pass rush. And the lack of pressure now is a big thing. Now, like we highlighted earlier, Chase Young is on his way to potentially helping to single-handedly redefine and change that all by himself so far this year. So he'll be somebody that, of course, will be tasked with keeping the production up and maybe getting the production up as well. So that'll have to be another big thing that we'll see. But so far, I'm wrong. I was wrong on that. And then finally, look, I thought special teams were going to be okay. I really did. I definitely thought special teams was going to be okay. I thought Phil Galliano was going to be able to carry everything in from Darren Rizzi. They didn't change a lot. They're still doing a lot of things that Darren Rizzi was doing, but man, there is a big difference in terms of what the product has been so far. So the Saints have got to get that right. But that's a place where I was absolutely wrong for New Orleans as well. So here you go. 4 things that I got wrong. Don't let me get a big head. I'll knock myself down. I got you all taken care of. All right. We appreciate you very much as always. We'll see you here tomorrow for Crossover Thursday. James Jarko of Locked On Bucks here to help me break down the Saints and Panthers, Saints and Buccaneers game. We appreciate you very much. As always, making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. If you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing, how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.